All right, this video is about summary and purpose annotations, and it's about the basics of annotating an article or a text for summary statements and for purpose statements. And this is specific to my class, Mrs. Hamer, but it could be useful for other courses as well. But I'm using examples that are specific to an assignment that we did in my class. All right. So annotation is just the process of marking up a text, so making your own personal notes for further analysis and for close reading. Why do we annotate? Well, we annotate to prepare to respond in discussion and writing. So because annotation gets us into closer reading of the text, we're then prepared to respond with our own thoughts. It's really hard to have a good discussion on a text and to know where we stand on the main arguments and the author's claims if you haven't really gotten into what the author is saying and how they're proving their point. So let's talk specifically about the steps. The first step is to circle words you are unfamiliar with. On the first read, it's important to do this because that way you are kind of eliminating barriers for yourself. So you're going to define unfamiliar terms in your own words. And for those of you who understand every word when you read the text, like there are no unfamiliar words, that can happen. But I would still like you to circle words that are central and important to the message of the text. So kind of those big terms that show up in the text that are important to what the author is trying to say. Specifically, we're looking at this article here. Let's say I'm reading and I get tripped up on the word maligned. I might want to go back and highlight that if I'm annotating on a Chrome, and then maybe do a little bit of research on what that means so it's not a barrier to me. The great thing about a Google Doc is you have this Control-Shift-Y, and you can highlight a word and it will actually define it for you here. All right. The second step is going to be to chunk the article. And chunking the article just involves asking yourself the question, which paragraphs are supposed to belong together? In general, we'll get to other text types later, but in general, a text is going to have an intro, an issue or problem, some main arguments and support, and a conclusion. It may help to draw boxes around the text as you're labeling, but in general, you're going to chunk and separate the article into its individual pieces. This can really help you see how the author has organized the text, and also it can help you see what major support the author is using in the text as well for major examples and evidence. All right, so step 3 is what you're going to do on the right of the article. This is where you're going to summarize each paragraph in your own words and try to stick to 3 to 5 words. That's a really small amount, but you're trying to give yourself really short little notes that you can come back to remember the main idea of that specific chunk or paragraph. Again, try to stick to that 3 to 5 words. It can be really challenging. The next step is step 4. So we're going to be looking at each chunk or paragraph, and we're going to be looking at purpose annotations. So on the left, you're going to describe the purpose of each chunk. And here you're asking yourself the question, why is this specific chunk here? What is it even doing for the entire text? Why did the author include this section? How does it change the meaning, or what does it add? So my example is here, and this arrow is sort of labeling a section of text in which the author is providing evidence, but maybe your left hand or your purpose annotation on the left is going to describe the purpose of the introduction. Maybe you're going to describe where the conclusion is and why and how the author concludes the text. You're asking yourself those questions for step 4. And then step 5 is where you start to respond. And again, this is all to prepare for discussion and for writing. You're marking up the text so you're ready to have a good quality conversation. So for this, one tool that you can use, and there are definitely others out there, but one tool that you can use is you can use TQEs. So this is where you're writing your personal thoughts. Where do you see yourself in the text? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? What related experiences do you have, etc.? Q is where you write your questions. These should be open ended. They should not be able to be answered in the text. These aren't questions that you have before you read the text. These are questions you have after you read the text. So they could be research questions, questions that you'd have to actually search for and find the answer through discussion and through research online. They could be discussion questions. What do you want to talk with your peers about after reading this text? Or they could be confusion questions, areas of the text where you were confused and you want to go back and you want to talk to people about what you found. Um, and then E, you have your epiphanies. And an epiphany doesn't have to be a catharsis moment. It can just be a major takeaway that you have, or a connection to other texts or content or a personal experience. So this is where you start to make important connections in your reading. So, for example, if you're reading an article and you find a really cool connection between something in the article and a character you're reading about in the novel, that could be a really cool epiphany. And it's kind of like an aha moment. Again, not all your aha moments are going to be these grand catharsis moments, but these are basically your major takeaways and your realizations as you're reading the text. Those would also be something that you would want to share after reading the article. Let's go through quick little summary of what we learned. So step 1, you're going to circle and define your unfamiliar words. If they're all familiar, circle words that are central to the text's meaning. Step 2, you're going to chunk the paragraphs based on what the author is doing. Step 3, summary annotations on the right. So for each paragraph or chunk, you're going to write a 3 to 5 word summary. Step 4, your purpose annotations are going to be on the left. So you're going to describe the purpose of each paragraph or chunk. Why is it there? What is the author doing with it? Step 5, you're going to respond. And this is an important note here below. Do we always use all the steps? No. Annotation is a tool. There are definitely different purposes for each step. For example, if you're wanting to grow your vocabulary, step 1 would be an awesome thing to do in a text, right? Where you're circling and practicing defining unfamiliar words. If you're wanting to write a rhetorical précis, maybe all of the steps are going to be important for that. If you are just wanting to write a summary, if you're asked to write a summary, you're going to spend most of your time on step 3. So yes, we're going to be practicing all of the steps frequently, but keep in mind that they all serve different purposes. And there are also times that we're not going to be using each individual steps. And there will also be times in this course, and probably in other courses too, where you are asked to choose which steps would be helpful for you as you're reading a text. All right. Thank you so much.